I was a daddy's boy, and my daddy, I was with him all of the time. I have gone hunting with him when he had to carry me into the woods and tell me, don't look up, don't move, and all. And I was just really a daddy's boy, and I was all my life, and he taught me everything that I know. So I've been running boats since I was about 5 or 6 years old, and I took boats and tested them for the Bowman Brothers building boats, Arkansas Travelers. I took and raced on the Hudson River, down the Hudson River, there from Albany down to New York City, raced. And my dad, he was running one boat, I was running another one, and our pictures in boating magazines right there for racing. Raced on Lake Winnebago, raced on the Mississippi, did a lot of boat racing right there, and also testing boats for boat builders right there. And all my jobs go out and see if I could turn them over. I turned 18 on May 24th. I graduated on June the 1st, and I went into Camp Chaffee at Fort Smith right there on June the 20th, and off to the service. From Camp Chaffee right there, I went down to Keesler Field and take basic training down there. And during the basic training, we dropped the atomic bomb, and that ended the war. So they took all of us to shut that down, and we went to New York, got on ships, went to Germany, is where I went to Munich, and because all of the soldiers was going home, they wanted to get home, they'd been fighting a war, and they took and I had warehouse experience in my dad's liquor business that we had back then, and he took and sent me down to the BMW plant. I had a big place down there to store Army stuff. I was a corporal. I had a room about 40 by 40 with guns into it, binoculars, watches, all of these things that these guys was leaving the country with to come back to America. And I had the only keys to that other than my CEO, and these young people that was in the service, I taught them how to drive forklifts, how to stack boxes. They just think you'd stack them straight up instead of interlocking them. I taught them also, we had motorcycles. I taught some of them how to ride motorcycles. And I had a weasel that I drove around the base with and all, and moved stuff with. But I enjoyed it. My CEO right there, he was a P-47 pilot, and we became very good friends, and we took and would go fishing on the weekends and do things, and I would take and try to make some bait and try to make some things right there and all to go, but we had a very good time with it. These guys, they would take and run into a post with a forklift or something and go bang, and this German lady that I had that was working as a secretary and keeping books there and so forth, she'd dive underneath of the desk right there, thought it was a bomb going off right there. And also we had ponds around over there, so whenever that they had fires and all, the fire trucks could pump the water out of like a swimming pool to try to put fires out with and all. I have developed some things. One thing was reamed hot water tank. And they got small aluminum around the tanks up there, and they had trouble with the screws. they'd screw them in and they'd just get to an end and go round and around. Told us about them. So I took and looked at them and worked on some screws. And I could only get one company to make the screws for me, and it was in Japan to start with, right there. But to make a bolt right there, you pull the rod to get it the right size. Then they take and put the thread, to put the head onto it. It stamps and put the head. That's why you can have different kinds of heads, and I can put initials onto them or anything, which you can see with some. And then they put the threads onto it. Well, what I did was I got them to take and make the bolt right there and all, and then thread it first all the way up, and then put the head onto it. So when you see a screw that the threads go all the way into the top, I was the one that developed that right there.
My goodness, I did not know that.
And some other things that I did with people, whenever they got problems, I like to work with them, wrenches and so forth and all for the water companies and frozen pipes and so forth and all. I made a lot of stuff like that. After I got back, my dad and I, we talked, and I wanted to get rid of those apartments and things, and I told my dad that I wanted to take over our real estate. So I started building warehouses. I built warehouses for McKesson and Lincoln right there. Big warehouses, 30,000, 50,000 square feet. And when I say I built them, some people say I built that building. All I did was put up the money. I took 4 people and myself. I got a bulldozer. I leveled the ground. I had an instrument. I could set the building up there, do the levels onto it, set it where it went right there. I would take and dig the thing, tie the steel together, set the forms, pour the concrete, tear them down, set them again right there. Built these buildings, steel's 20 by 50 foot bays right there. Brick with 6-inch, 8-inch tile on the inside, an inch in between, 12-inch walls onto them. And I put a quarter of an inch to the foot slope on the roofs, because that's what I wanted. And I let the roofs go 6 inches out over the end of the building so the water didn't run down on the brick on the outside. By the way, while I was building those buildings, I had trouble getting bolts to go into the concrete right there, anchor bolts right there. There's only a couple places you could buy them in town. And I had a building that had bearings, Little Rock bearing service. I needed a couple of bearings, and I went down there to get those bearings. And I was standing there at the counter, and he went back to get these bearings, and there were shelves in there I could see over the top of them. And by God, if there's enough people buying bearings to support this here and pay the rent and everything right here, what about fasteners? So I took and went back to my warehouse and found the box right there with fasteners, St. Louis Bolt Company. And I took and called up there and talked to a man up there. Sheely was his name. He was part of the RCA family, and I told him what I wanted to do. And he told me that it needed to be a standalone business. Well, I took and talked to some people about trying to run this here for me and do it. But I had built a building for N.O. Nelson Plumbing Company. And there was a man down there running that there. And Scotchman ice machines in those days was only sold whereabouts that the architects put them on plans for hotels or a restaurant or something. And they knew that they needed people to go out and call on these filling stations and all of the restaurants and call on people. So the man took and left that right there. Mr. Holder was his name. And of course I took and made a deal with him to take, and we put both of our stuff started out in a 7,000 square foot warehouse right there. He's selling Scotch machine and running the fastener business for me right there. Because he knew about buying, he knew about inventory, he knew about everything because of running the plumbing company. And anyway, we went from there to a 10,000 square foot building. I moved my, then he took and went off, started a bit making fasteners, and I took the sales business. And we moved from there to a 30,000 square foot building, to a 60,000 square foot building, and today the building is like 3 acres, and we need to add on to it. We got satellites, warehouses up in Pennsylvania and Ohio and around the country, Mississippi and everything right there. With your military experience, one of the things is just like I started with about warehousing. You have to teach people. No one knows everything, and I don't know. I'm still learning today, and I enjoy learning. I read nothing but facts. I've never read a fiction magazine or anything. I just deal in facts all of the time, and that's what you've got to do and all. But I learned from them about how you discuss a problem and say, have you ever thought of doing it this way instead of that way or something? You don't want people to get mad, oh, he's demanding this here. You got to work with them. And I never ask anyone to do anything that I won't do myself. Well, we had no choice about joining the military. You was either going to be drafted or join. And but it was awful hard on my dad because I had a cousin who was one of the first in and got shot down over the Philippines, and they chopped his head off. And my dad worried about me maybe ending up the same way when I went in. I didn't tell them when I would be home because in those days I never knew if it was going to be today or tomorrow or 2 days later with flights and everything and all. And you never knew, am I going to get released today or tomorrow or a week from now? So I just took and waited, and when it turned me loose, I headed to the airport. Of course, I wouldn't get sick, but a buddy of mine right there, we would go through the chow line right there, and there'd be a guy up there ahead of us about 2, and we'd say, hey, you look bad right there. Are you getting sick? You know, you really look bad. Maybe you need to go. So he would leave me to get his dessert. There's more buildings right there that's down. It's just a shame. This is a swimming pool right here, but they had water that they'd put into them in case of fire. This is more buildings. It's just down, just pitiful to see a whole city just laying on the ground, and beautiful churches all tore up and all right there.